Well guys, it's fall and kind of just want to do a little video on how I store my Harley Davidson. Um, as we all know, most Harley Davidson owners, we take pride in what we've got. And this just happens to be my Harley Davidson, which you all know if you guys watched my previous video. This is a 1977 Ironhead. It's got the Sportster motor on it, all that good stuff. And basically, what I do to prevent dry rotting, um, battery, from draining because of rectifier failure, things like that. Um, I have, of course, a gravel driveway and gravel under my carport and all the good stuff where I store my Harley. Naturally, traditionally, if you don't have anything to put it in, typically a tarp of some sort or some kind of cover would be the preferred method of keeping your Harley Davidson and preventing it from rusting real bad and just weathering in a sense. And then if you also are on gravel, like some of us are, what I did was I cut a piece of plywood. I think this is like 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch or something like that. And I just cut it wide enough to where I can roll my Harley up on it. And basically, where I come in from over there, I drive it straight in, and I just park it right there. And of course, on this side, I have a 2x4 to help keep it up straight. Which, like I said, it's not fallen yet. I've had no issues. I always make sure that I don't ever have any problems like that. Now, another thing that it will help prevent is the dry rotting of your tires. From sitting in that gravel or dirt or whatever you may have, that will help slow that process down. Keeping your board clean to prevent it, take your little broom or something of that nature and sweep off the dust and on the plywood. That also helps. Now, what also helps prevent the dry rotting is the straightening of your front tire. As you can see, I straightened my front tire up to where it sits level to where, as you can tell, like I said, I'm standing relatively level, and my tire is, of course, level also. That will help prevent like a flat spot from happening. When you take off, sometimes, if it's real cold or real hot outside, you'll go to take off, you'll have like a little bounce as soon as you get on the asphalt or concrete or something of that nature. That'll help prevent that. Not always the case, but it does. Now, some people put an oil additive in their motorcycle, like Lucas oil treatment or something like that during the wintertime. That'll help keep things oiled up real well, and it does work. I recommend doing it for your car too, also, especially if you're not going to be running it very often and it just sits a lot. Personally, I try to drive my Harley in the wintertime too, as long as there's no snow on the ground. It's really chilly, but leathers help. So using like a Lucas oil treatment, just pour you some in your reservoir there, or oil tank. Some people call it different things. And just dump it in there, and not too much, and I only do like a regulated amount. And then run your bike for about 15 minutes, let it get up in there real good, and then you're pretty much done. Everything will stay nice and oiled, and nothing will, basically around the bearings and things like that, have a tendency, after it sits over time, the oil will seep out of that, and usually you'll have the appearance of a little bit of rust if you were to actually able to look inside your motor. Believe it or not, it does happen. Another thing is battery maintenance, which is a fairly common problem which most people have. My battery, of course, sits behind there. Well, most of the time, a good thing to have on hand, and you can get these down at your local Napa or any auto parts store, depending on what you like, is a good old multimeter, voltmeter. Some people call it different things. Of course, on mine, I turn it to volts 20. Set it on top of my motorcycle seat there, and I give her a good test to see what my battery voltage is. And usually if you have a good rectifier and a good generator, some people just, they have different opinions about it, and then you just touch your battery cable there, and that should be around 12.9, which is 12.89, so it's pretty good. So I've literally only lost 0.01 volts in 4 days that it's been sitting here. Of course, I have a good battery, and I recently have tested my regulator, which is right up here in the front. It helps keep it cool, and that's where the least amount of vibration is. I might have to get new seals for it, new rubber grommets, I should say, new rubber grommets for it, because it does have a slight problem every once in a while, but it is actually called a mechanical regulator. And I prefer mechanical regulators over solid state regulators and things like that, because you can fix them yourself. When a solid state goes out, pretty much you just replace it. And depending on what bike you have, things like that, it can be a little bit costly. Now, batteries. So let's say my battery was down and I needed to keep it charged up, whether that be because of my regulator up here in the front or my generator, which is down there, having some slight issues, polarization problems or anything like that. Well, we don't want to add to the issues of a battery being, or not battery, a generator or a regulator being the issue. Because believe it or not, power is actually sitting in this bike as it sits right here. Even though everything is off, that generator and that regulator have power going to it, in a sense. And with anybody that knows anything about electricity, the longer the distance or the longer it has to sit, the more power you lose over time. Okay? And if a bike's not running, basically it's not charging, and you're going to lose a good system, you'll probably lose up to about a volt, 1 volt, 1 or 2 volts, a whole winter season, depending on where you live, things like that. And usually your bike will start up just fine. But if you come out to your bike, which is also good to have a good trickle charger or some form of charger, which I'll get to that in a second. But if you notice after your bike sits 4 or 5 days, well, you could have a little bit of problem if it loses 3, 4, 5 volts. 2 volts, 3 volts, okay, it's probably fine. You probably don't need to check out anything. You probably can get away with it and be all right. But for my case, I had a problem where my generator was basically, I'm trying to keep it without putting technical terms, but basically it was losing its ability to hold back from using the voltage, from the battery. And that's not because of the regulator. That was because the stator inside, magnets, all that good stuff, basically it was losing energy because it was making some contact. It was doing some things it wasn't supposed to, which that is actually a really simple fix. You can buy the parts online most of the time. You can also just take your generator off. Of course, you'll have to repolarize, which I'll show a polarization video here sometime on how to do that on a generator. But you take your generator off. It's bolted on by 2 simple bolts. Remove these 2 bolts. You take your regulator off, and your battery will most likely stay charged if you charge it back up. Or you can also just disconnect these 2 particular leads down here, which I'm on this side of the bike, so I'm just going to show you on this side. You can remove those 2 particular leads and remove your regulator leads, and that your battery should stay charged all winter. Now, contrary to popular belief, most people see that, let's say you got concrete. Well, most people seem to think that putting a battery on concrete, it will drain it. That's an old myth. That's actually been disproven a long time ago, but some people stand by it, and that's fine. I personally, I'll put mine on the gravel. I don't care. It doesn't hurt it. It doesn't do anything. Battery loses most of its charge naturally when it's exposed, when the poles are exposed to weather, static electricity, things like that. You get wind blowing across those. They have a tendency to discharge a little bit. Nothing that we feel as humans, but they will over time. So disconnecting your regulator, disconnecting your generator if you're having problems. I wouldn't disconnect it, especially if you bought a new battery. If you bought a new battery, you don't want to just burn it up. Like for myself, I keep my battery in the box here, and I hate taking it out. It's just a pain in the butt. I can remove these two bolts on the sides here, move this cover, got to undo this, pull this out a certain way, and yeah, and it's just a pain in the butt for me. You know, considering this is a custom bike itself. So basically, if I was having a problem with it discharging my battery, I would unplug those right there. Of course, I'd have to repolarize it, all that good stuff. And like I said, I'll make a video on the polarization. It's really simple, real easy. But yeah. So, but so let's say your battery's draining just a little bit, just enough to where it's not allowing your bike to charge, which is usually about 10 volts. 10 volts is where the starters, for some reason, don't want to seem to even try to kick the motor over. On a Harley Davidson, it could be less than that too. It just depends on the bike. I've noticed how much electricity draw and things like that. And for that situation, I'd recommend just a little old charger. This is nothing spectacular. This is a little old 2 amp. It's got 2 amp, 10 amp, and 20 amp. I paid $45 for it down at my local Napa. And if I just happen to test it and it happens to be low, well, I'll charge it up. Well, I haven't had to charge it in a little while, so honestly, I won't have to worry about it. Because I redid the brushes inside the generator, and of course I tested my mechanical regulator, and the mechanical regulator is just fine. So nothing seems to be drawing energy. Everything is great, which is perfect. That's what you want to see. Also, if your battery's going down, you could have something small. It could be grounding itself out. Even walking, I had a situation with an old FXR that I had not too long ago, where I had just a little grounding issue. I had some wires that were coming around the back side of the starter. Of course, the starter's back here was on my old FXR, and it come around the starter kind of like this, and this was grounding itself out. And you could walk past it, and the vibration would just touch it enough, and sometimes it would stay in contact, and it would drain my battery, things like that. Usually, it's not like a major wiring issue most of the time. Anything that's protected, like in the frame rails, stuff like that, most of the time it's not that. It'll be something that's exposed, or something that's exposed to the weather, like those two connections down here. It could be, like I said, the generator, it could be the regulator, it could be anything like that. It can even be a coil. I've seen coils sit there and have problems, and they will actually, because they're trying to constantly fill up with basically keep itself charged, basically, and primed and ready to go to throw that next spark out. And that's usually because you got a bad switch. Some kind of bad switch, or it could be a ignition switch. It could be something like that. But it could be something even more wild where, your high and low beams, one of your wires burnt together and it's actually causing issues. But I've seen things like that before because most of my electronics are inside this light, especially the ones that connect to the handlebars. Now, I don't know if it's like that on your Harley. You could have it, I don't know. Different bikes, different customizations. But yeah, so typically you can pretty much get away with mostly anything with a charger, a multimeter, and just properly storing your bike on a proper surface to where it doesn't wear your tires out, things like that. And putting a little bit of Lucas oil treatment in there to prevent, it'll get everywhere inside there, and it'll prevent the rust from over the winter time. Here, particularly where I am, it doesn't get particularly too cold. It but it does, moisture does accumulate, as you can tell on the side of this polished aluminum. There is kind of like a little bit of moisture cloud on there, cloudiness. And same thing with the chrome there. But that's just the way that is here where I live. Now, also another thing is that I also suggest too, typically, before you just take off on your bike, of course, let it warm up for about 5 minutes. Don't just take off, just take off and start heading down the road. Allow that oil to flow, get that oil moving. Typically on my bike, what I like to do is I'll open up the oil thing, and I can actually peer down in there, and I can see the oil, of course, and then also I can start the bike. I start the bike, and I rev it up a little bit, and I can actually see a stream that will shoot across that. That kind of lets me know that the oil pump is working correctly. You can also do other things too, like I've seen people, they will undo these right here to see if the oil's actually flowing in the top of the heads, which that one right there. Personally, that gets really messy. If the oil's flowing, chances are it's flowing up in there. And then also, typically, you want to check your tail lights. Check your tail lights, turn your bike on, hit your brakes, blah, blah, blah. Check your brakes, check your turn signals, and everything like that before you go riding off. Because the last thing I want is a ticket because of a tail light or something like that. Now, let's say you keep blowing tail light bulbs. There is some rubber that you can get that will go inside the crease there, depending on what bike you have. So that rubber is very important. That prevents that from vibrating around. Same thing with this piece of rubber. Usually comes in the kit when you buy a particular tail light or anything like that, and even installing your own custom tail lights, they usually come with the rubber pieces. So, and then trying to think if there's anything else that I can think of here. Oh yes, gas treatment. Typically, I like to put some heat in mine. I put some heat in mine that kind of keeps the fuel water free. It even stabilizes and things like that, and it keeps it pretty well healthy. And once or twice a month, I'll come out in the winter time and I will start my Harley Davidson. And I'll let it run and let it warm itself up and all that good stuff, because I definitely don't want any issues. Ain't nothing worse than going out on the very first day that you and your wife or you and your girlfriend decide, let's go for a ride in the summer, and the bike not start, oil's not flowing correctly, tires flat, things like that. But okay, guys, that's just my tips on what I do to prevent my bike from basically being immobilized, I guess you could say, in other words. And like I said, most of this maintenance stuff is relatively simple. It's really cheap, and yeah. So, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will, like I said, pretty soon this bike will be getting tore down, so I'll run through, certain things. I'll probably make another video here in the next couple of days on how to polarize your generator and checking your regulators and basically your charging systems. And a lot of the old videos, they're not updated, things like that with new parts, things, all that good stuff. And I haven't found a video with mechanical regulator either. So, but okay, guys, well, please like and subscribe, and hope you enjoy the video.